Hello everyone, welcome back. This is the fourth video in my C++ video series, and in this video we'll be talking about expressions and statements. So, what's an expression? So, an expression is a combination of variables, operators, and operands. So, we could have, let's go for a simple one: x plus y is equal to b. So here b is the variable because it's storing the result of this operation x plus y, and then x and y here are the operands. They are the data we'll be working with, and then the addition symbol here is the operator. So the operator is any mathematical symbol. It could be addition, it could be subtraction, it could be multiplication, it could be division. So those are the operators. They are mathematical symbols. And then the operands are what's the data we are working with. And then the variable is where the solution will be stored. Okay. So we have different types of expressions. There's integral expressions. For integral expressions, all the operands, the x and y value in that case are integers. They are integer type data types, and their result will also be an integer. And we have floating point expressions. For those, the operands are floating points, and the result will be a floating point. And then we also have mixed expressions, which you can, for a mixed expression, you can have x to be an integer and y to be a floating point. And then the result will also be a floating point. Yeah. And we also okay, so we also have relational expressions. So let me just say relational expressions. So for a relational expression, the result will be a bool. And then this is how a relational expression will look like. We can have a, let's say a is greater than or equal to y. Now, given the values of a and y, you put it into your system to then determine whether a is actually greater than or equal to y, and then it will give a value, the result to be true or false. We can also have one that is like p plus q is less than 10. The program will check if the values put into p and q, whether p is actually p plus q is less than 10. Okay. And we also have logical expressions. Comment that. So I'm using a single line comment. So logical expressions. Logical expressions combine two or more relational expressions, and they also return a bool. But these use logical operators. So we could say R is greater than Y. That's our first relational expression. And now we are adding the logic X is equal to sorry, is equal to 70. Now for this, the program is checking two things. If R is really greater than Y and X is equal to 70, both should be true. For if it return true, if one is true and one is false, it will return false because this is an end logical expression here. And then we can also have b b is equal to 40, or so this is the or logical expression. F is equal to 20. So for this one, as long as any of the two is true, so B could be equal to 40 and F is not equal to 40. It could be equal to something else, but it will still return true because this is checking all. So if either of them is correct. Alright. Now let's use these expressions in code. Let's create. Let me create a simple line of code. Now let me comment these first. So actually, I'll use a multi-line comment. Just comment this whole section now right here. Okay. So the first. Okay. So now let me create. Let me just create a simple line of code. So say let's create a variables in A is equal to 700. 700 and B is equal to, let's say, 500. Okay. We have two integers now. Let's say float R is equal to 67.5. Then let's have another float G 10.9. Okay. So for our first expression, our first integral expression, A to know in, let's call it sum, is equal to A plus B. And then we say that we say C out, the sum is, then we put sum in and terminate. Now let's have a floating point expression to have. So we say float, let's call it difference. So we say difference, float difference is equal to R minus G. And then this. So the difference is put difference here, right? And for the last one, to be a combination of an int and a float. And like I said earlier, for a mixed expression, which is an int and a float, the return type will be a float. The data return will be a float. So float, let's say division is equal to, let's make it A, that's 700 divided by, let's say the float G, return the division is put division here. Okay, so now we have integral expression, our fluent expression, and our mixed expression. So let's build first, check for any errors. I'm getting an error up here. Inspect the file and default. Let me scroll. Why is it saying that? 22. Oh, okay. I see my error. I used a comma instead of a semicolon. The semicolon is a termination symbol. It helps to let the compiler notice where my line of code ends. So when I build it again, no errors. Yes, so let's run this. Okay, so you see here. So I did my calculations beforehand and made sure these were actually the correct values. You can also cross check. So 500 plus 700, that's 1,200. Then 6.55 minus 10.9. Now, for using the relational and logical expression brings us to the second part of today's video, statements. Statement is a single instruction that performs an action. We have different types of statements. There's the selection statement, there are selection statement, which is the if or switch. We have expression statements, there's declaration statements used to introduce a new variable. So if I say int, let's say, int trees is equal to 7. This is an expression statement. And that is a declaration statement. Actually, I'm declaring a new variable. We have jump statements, which are used to manipulate normal statements, uh, like break and continue, which we'll be using in the switch statement. And then compound statements, which are multiple statements put together, and they are enclosed in curly brackets. Okay, so let's start with the selection statement, the if statement. So for the if statement, if a certain condition, then it runs. So let's say if let's put a relational expression there. Let's say if a is greater than 1,000, then the curly brace. See out it is greater than it is greater actually. Let us make it is greater. And then end line. Okay. Let me comment this section. Let me use a multi-line comment for this section. Okay, so we still retain the variables we created. Moving on to the if statements. So if A, which is 700, is greater than 1,000, see out it is greater, but 700 is not greater than 1,000. So what will our compiler give us? Build no errors and we run, and then it's not displaying anything. But if we change the statement here and say if A is less than 1,000, it is less, and then build no errors. We run it and we get it is less because 700 is less than 1,000. So that was for an if statement. Now we also have if else. So for an if else statement, it goes if it is not this, then do that. So if let's use the flute. If R is less than G. And if R is less than G, and C out, it is less, full stop. Else, curly braces, C out, it is greater. Anyway, okay. So if our value for R, wait, let me, yeah, so we create a line break here. Yes. So if our value for R is less than our value for G, you can see here that R is actually greater than our value for G. So R is greater than G. So it should say, you should actually say it is greater. I made a mistake here. It is greater. And then if it is not actually greater, then we say it is less. Okay. So building on. We're getting an error here. Alright, got to terminate. Okay. So ignoring this first one, which is for the first statement, the if statement we made alone. It is okay, I made a spelling error here, but you can see it says it is greater because the value for R is actually greater than G. Now let's change the values in there. Let's make this 7.55. Let me adjust this. Let me actually comment this section. This is another way to do a multiple line comment. Okay, so now it says it is less because our value for R has been reduced and it is now less than our value for G. Now we can also have if else if. So if else if, so if else right now we were dealing with two. We are dealing with two variables. But if else if, we could use it for when we are dealing with multiple choices, multiple outcomes. Okay. You can go and work more with that, but this is how the basic syntax for an if else if works. So I'll say if, then a command. I haven't created these variables, so the code won't run. This is just a trial showing you how the frame for an if else if statement would look. So you can say if, let's say weather, like I said in our previous video, is equal to sunny. Okay, you know what? Let me actually run this code. So let me say weather is equal to sunny. Let's just declare that. So if weather is equal to sunny, see how, and then we'll have our final line. The final line will just be an else. So else, so if it is not any of these three options, else, see out, let's say un, unidentified weather. Okay, so let me comment me comment this section. Okay. Now let's build and run the code. I get it. Right. I did not declare whether string whether. Okay. Now it says it is sunny because we stated earlier that the weather is sunny. Let me actually space. Okay, now let's change weather to cloudy. Let me run. It is cloudy. And now let's give it an option that we didn't account for. Say the weather is snowing. Let's say it's snowing. Unidentified with that because the program does not know what to what to do with this weather type. We didn't give it an option for that. Okay, so that's for the if else if statement. We also have nested ifs, which is an if within an if. So it looks like this. Now let's look at the nested if. So a nested if statement is basically an if statement within an if statement. So let's say if let's use the variable b. If b is equal to 1,000, and if a is greater than 10, see out the comparison is correct. Okay. Now when we run this code, we are not getting anything because b is not equal to 1,000, even though a is greater than 10. That's for our if statement here because we didn't give it an alternative. So let's change b to its actual value. Let's say 500. Now let's run this. Comparison is correct because b is greater than 500 and because b is equal to 500 and a is greater than 10. Okay. Now another way we could have done this is using the logical expression, and we could have used the logical expression in an if else statement. So let me comment this. Actually, for all the section we commented, let's move it out. Let's just put it down here. It's commented, so it won't affect the running of the code. Now we have more space. to see. Okay, so let's say if A is equal to 7,000, I change the value of A to 7,000. Yeah. If A is equal to 7,000 and B is, let's use, greater than 40, see out the comparison is correct. Else, see out the comparison is not correct. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, so the comparison is correct because A is equal to 7,000 and B is greater than 40. Now let's change this to say less than. So let's say B is less than 40. Now the comparison is not correct because it does not satisfy the condition we set here. Okay, so that's it for selection. Now we are moving on to switch statements. So let's say int. Let's name this variable beta. So we declared it here. And then we ask the user to select the weather condition today. And then we'll give them an inbuilt windy. Okay. Now we go into actual switch statement. So use the switch keyword weather. And now we create our cases. So case one. So for case one, see out. It's a lovely day. And then after the first case, case one, we put in a break. So break, a break statement there. Then we add case two. Hold on. This has to be in brackets. Right. So let's terminate that. And then we have our default case. So if it's none of these, if the user doesn't select any of the options we've given them and decides to input, let's say 4 or 5. So our default case will be, let's go back a little. Default cout Let's prompt the user. So choose an option provided and terminate. Okay. Let me comment this section. We will be using it. Okay. Now let's build and run. Yeah, I'm getting an error here. See out. See what we did. Oh, I added the one by mistake. Okay, for sake of formatting, let me make some. Let me end line. Now let's run it again. So I just realized I forgot to give the user the choice to see in whether terminations. Okay, so select the weather condition today. Let's say 2 for cloudy. Says grab an umbrella, like it's all here. Now, if we run it and we choose an option that doesn't exist, 7, please choose an option provided. It prompts the user. Okay, so that's it for the switch statement. And for the break being used here, if I removed the break, okay, let me not remove it, let me comment it. If I comment the break here, see what happens in the running of the code. So I choose 1, sunny. And I was telling me it's a lovely day, grab an umbrella. So it's running both lines and then it's breaking after this one. So the break helps the program know that after running this line, you can stop. Okay. So we've used the break here. We've seen how break works. We also have continue. I'll be talking more about that when I go to iterative statements like the for, while, do while, and loops. Now we've looked at different operators. So let me just for the operators we had the arithmetic, operators. Let me write everything. I'll comment everything. Modulo looks like this, like the percent symbol. And we also had the logical operators. So for the logical, we had the end, which checks if both, sorry, and which checks if both conditions are satisfied and only returns true if both are satisfied, if both are true. We have the or, which returns a true if is either of the options we've given is true or false, or either of the conditions. And then we have not. I didn't work with not in this tutorial, but I'll be working in not in the other tutorial to show you how it goes. So you can have not equal to or not less than or not greater than. We also have the increment. Let's say if we have an integer x, and then the increment operator would be like this. or, and then we have a decrement operator, which would go minus minus x or x minus minus. I'll be talking more about this in the loops video. We have conditional operators too. So a conditional operator, it would look like if I say int a is equal to 50. Let me declare on the same line b is equal to 300. And I'll create another integer variable and call it max for the maximum number. I made a mistake. Okay, max is equal to a is greater than b. Then you add a question mark and a colon b terminate. Now we see out, let's say the maximum is let me do that. Right, let me comment this section. Okay, let's run the code. Oh, I forgot about our earlier work here. So let me actually remove this. And yeah, so I'll build and run. And you see the maximum is 300, so it has chosen the highest value from the two values we gave it. Okay. Now with arithmetic operators, we have order of precedence. So the way the order of precedence works is it deals with it deals with the operands in the bracket first. Then it goes to multiplication, division, and modulo before addition and subtraction. So if you have a long line, let's say you have 8 plus, okay, let's assume I've given all of these numerical values. So a plus b minus 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 b times f divided by, let's say, t. So the program will calculate to calculate the bracket first, so b times f, then to divide it by t before adding a and b and then subtracting. That's how it works. So that's order of precedence. And this brings an end to today's tutorial video. Thank you.